Chapter 1171. That's it. David watched Tibetan Ching turn into a huge stone man with disdain in his eyes. Not to mention stones, even if it is an iron wall, David can now punch through it with one punch. Seeing David's disdainful appearance, Zhang Qing laughed loudly and said, "Don't think that you can easily smash the stones in my body. If you don't believe me, try it." After Zhang Qing finished speaking, his fist like a hill smashed down towards David fiercely. Seeing this, David clenched his fists tightly, and the golden light on his body continued to flicker. Then the body jumped up and punched together. From David's point of view, this punch is enough to smash the body made of these stones into pieces. But the result was beyond David's expectations. After David's punch followed Tibetan Ching, he only felt a huge force coming from his arm, and then David's body fell rapidly. Rumbling. The punch of the Tibetan Ching directly smashed David into the ground. A deep pit of several meters appeared on the ground, and David's body was buried in the pit by rubble. "Ha ha ha, ignorant child, do you really think I'm wearing some rotten stones?" Seeing David being smashed into the ground by himself, Tibetan Ching laughed arrogantly. Seeing this, Xing Jun at the foot of the mountain frowned deeply. He did not expect that Tibetan Ching was so powerful. It seemed that David would be hard to resist. "Everyone has prepared a net for me, I can't let this Tibetan green escape," Xing Jun whispered to his subordinates. Soon, several subordinates took out the golden rope in their hands, ready to take action at any time. Clap la la! David's body stood up from the rubble, looking at Tibetan Ching in disbelief. David couldn't understand why his punch couldn't even hit some broken stones. Seeing that David was unscathed, Zhang Qing's face became a little unsightly. "This David is really strong." Seeing David stand up, Xing Jun couldn't help but admire. "I don't believe it anymore." A cold light flashed in David's eyes, and then his body instantly turned into a golden light, which came behind Zhang Qing, and then slammed into Zhang Qing's back with a ruthless punch. Tibetan Ching turned into a stone giant more than 10 meters high. Although his size and strength increased, his speed would definitely be much slower. David took advantage of this and made a sneak attack behind Tibetan Ching. Clang! David punched down, and a scene that shocked David happened. I saw David smashed the back of the Tibetan Blue with a punch. Not only did he not cause any damage to the Tibetan Blue, but he was hit by a huge anti-shock force and flew out. David's body was like a cannonball, instantly hitting the ground. The whole mountain began to tremble, and David's body was embedded in the mountain again. Zhang Qing turned around and looked at David with a sneer. "Haha, don't waste your energy, you can't break my megalithic armor." David stood up again and stared at the Tibetan green more than 10 meters high in front of him. Frowning his brows, he couldn't understand why this azure blue was doing something on these stones, and why these stones were actually harder than steel. And there is a huge anti-shock force, and this anti-shock force does not come from the Tibetan Blue, but from which stones? David gritted his teeth, and then his body burst out from here, and the golden fist slammed into Tibetan Ching with the momentum of destroying the dead. Boom! There was another loud noise, and the whole mountain shook a bit. This time, the Tibetan Ching didn't move, and was directly punched by David. And David's body was shaken out again. David's internal organs began to tumble. "Ha ha ha, I look at your strength, and I can still support you to punch a few times. When your energy is exhausted, you will be at my mercy." Tibetan Ching laughed. Chapter 1172. "Captain, it looks like David is going to lose. Such a high-intensity punch takes a lot of energy." A team member stepped forward and whispered in Xing Jun's ear, "This Tibetan Blue is too powerful, how can some rotten stones become indestructible on him?" Xing Jun frowned slightly, watching everything on the top of the mountain, and said to the team member, "Don't talk, just watch." At this time, David looked at the arrogant Tibetan Ching, gritted his teeth, and remained silent. The power of the dragon is all around, like a golden dragon circling the waist. Holy Light Fist! David stepped out, his fist hitting Tibetan Ching like a cannonball. Bang bang bang! After more than 10 punches in a row, David did not stop at all, and the power of the dragon in Longjing was constantly being swayed by David. But even so, Tibetan Ching was still unscathed, but David's mouth was splattered with blood. Do you still have the strength? Tibetan Ching looked down at David with disdain and humiliation in his eyes. David was panting, even with Longjing and Jindan, such a huge consumption still made the spiritual power in David's body almost exhausted. David gathered his spiritual power again, and the golden light on his fist began to flicker and expand, just like the dazzling sun in the sky. But when David was about to punch again, he was stopped by Xing Jun. David, stop! Xing Jun's figure was vertical, and the 100-meter-high mountain rushed straight to the top of the mountain. Seeing Xing Jun rushing up, the corner of Zhang Qing's mouth raised. Why, do you want to deal with me together? At this time, the arrogance of Tibetan Ching has reached the extreme. After all, David is now on the verge of collapse, which is not a cause for concern. Xing Jun ignored Tibetan Ching, but looked at David and said, "Don't fight, even if you use great power, it's useless. Because you didn't hit him, you were following the entire mountain against." After seeing Jun's observation just now, he found that every time David punched Tibetan Ching was fine, but the whole mountain began to tremble slightly. Every punch was like this, which made Xing Jun suspicious. Follow the whole mountain. David frowned, a little puzzled. This guy must have used some technique to connect his body to the whole mountain, so all the power you hit on these stones was transferred to this mountain. Every time you throw a fist, the whole mountain trembles, and that huge shock force comes from this mountain. Xing Jun followed David to explain. At this moment, David suddenly realized that he suddenly understood. And that Tibetan Ching frowned, he didn't expect Xing Jun to see his technique. After knowing the secret of the azure blue, David slowly looked at him, and the power of the dragon that originally surrounded his fist also dissipated. Since you are relying on this mountain, then I will let you leave here and see what else you are relying on. After David finished speaking, he rushed up, and then grabbed the waist of Tibetan Ching with both hands. With a loud shout, David was turned into a navy blue that was more than 10 meters high, and he was lifted up abruptly. Immediately after a hard toss, Tibetan Ching's huge body drew a parabola in the air and fell fiercely from the top of the mountain. Seeing this, Tibetan Ching exerted force and wanted to rush back to the top of the mountain. However, the several tons of stone helmets around him made Tibetan Ching's actions very slow. Rumbling! Tibetan Ching's body smashed down the mountain, instantly smashing a large pit with a diameter of tens of meters, like a meteorite falling. With great difficulty, the clumsy body stood up. But as soon as I stood up, I saw a black shadow also falling from the top of the mountain. Immediately afterwards, Tibetan Ching's body suffered a heavy blow. Chapter 1173. Click, click. The stones on Tibetan Ching's body began to shatter, and finally turned into clumps of powder. On the other hand, Zhang Qing fell to the ground with an ugly face, and his body seemed to be severely injured. Standing up with difficulty, Zhang Qing looked at David with some panic in his eyes. "What else do you have?" David looked at Tibetan Ching and asked indifferently. Zhang Qing opened his mouth, but found that facing David, he really had nothing to do. He didn't understand that David's strength had not even reached the peak of Wuzong, but his strength was so terrifying. And the body wants to have a steady stream of power transmission. Since you have no other skills, then I will send you on the road. David slapped the palm of his hand towards Tibetan Ching. Stop! At this time, Xing Jun stepped forward to stop David. You can't kill him, I'm going to take him back and return to Mr. Shi. Xing Jun wants to go back to recover his life. Now if David killed Tibetan Ching, how would he explain to Mr. Shi? I have to kill him today, whoever stops me will die. David looked at Xing Jun with a firm look in his eyes, and there was no room for negotiation. You! Xing Jun's face flushed with anger, but there was nothing he could do. If he really followed David, now he doesn't even know if he is David's opponent. David, you take my life, my Tianzhemen is willing to respect you. Tibetan Qing began to beg David for mercy. Respect me? I don't look down on you evil cultivators who hurt people, damn. David remembered the fate of dozens of Jin family members, and his eyes burst with murderous intent. After David finished speaking, he grabbed a claw towards Zhang Qing, and Zhang Qing struggled to block, but unfortunately David's grab changed direction and stabbed into Zhang Qing's chest fiercely. David's hand penetrated directly into Tibetan Qing's chest, and then a huge force shattered Tibetan Qing's danshan. But the dark blue, whose danshan was completely broken, suddenly stretched out his hand and held David firmly, followed by a huge suction force that began to absorb the spiritual power of David. Ha ha ha, do you think that if you break my danshan, I will become a cripple? Tibetan Qing suddenly burst out laughing, and the panic just disappeared. David frowned, a little unbelievable, this Tibetan blue danshan has been broken, how could it still absorb his own spiritual power? Even if it is absorbed into the body, spiritual power is useless without danshan storage. Soon, David found that after his spiritual power entered the body of the Tibetan Qing, there was a light on the upper part of the abdomen of the Tibetan Qing. This light penetrates the dark blue skin and is very dazzling. So you still have Jindan in your body. David understood in an instant that this navy blue absorbed all the spiritual energy and stored it in the golden elixir. Jindan? What is Jindan? Tibetan Qing was a little surprised, he was not a cultivator, so how could he have a golden elixir? Looking at the appearance of Tibetan Qing, David knew that this Tibetan Qing couldn't contain a golden elixir, because only a cultivator could cultivate a golden elixir. Since it is not a golden pill, it must be a kind of orb, beast pill, or the like. Just like the dragon crystal in David's body. David's palm suddenly stretched upwards and directly grabbed the bead in Tibetan Qing's body. The navy blue face instantly became extremely ugly, and his eyes were full of fear. You, how can you still move? Tibetan Qing said in shock. David ignored him, but directly pulled the beads out of Tibetan Qing's body. Moreover, when the concentration technique was running, the spiritual power that had entered Zhang Qing's body was rapidly rushing back to David's body, and even Zhang Qing's own energy was rapidly draining. This. Zhang Qing's eyes widened, looking at David incredulously, the breath in his body was quickly disappearing. Chapter 1174. Soon, Tibetan Qing's whole person became sluggish, as if he was 10 years old in an instant. Looking at the scene in front of him, Xing Jun's expression became extremely complicated. In his opinion, only evil cultivators can do this kind of exercise that absorbs the power of others. Could it be that David is also a cultivator? But David is obviously not an evil cultivator, but how could David have such a practice? Xing Jun is confused. Tibetan Qing knelt down on the ground as a whole, and his curled body was only supported by one breath. David looked at the beads taken out from Tibetan Qing's body. It looked like a kind of spiritual bead, not a beast pill. This thing was given to. David threw the lingzhu in his hand directly to Xing Jun, and then continued, "This guy still has a breath, you can take it back for business." Xing Jun took the lingzhu, his eyes full of complexity and shock. This kind of spiritual bead is invaluable at first glance, but David gave it to himself easily. Xing Jun was about to follow David to thank him, but saw that David had already walked towards the distance. Xing Jun put away the spirit bead and grabbed it towards the Tibetan blue. But who knew that before he could touch Tibetan Qing, his body fell to the ground with a thud. There was no sound for a moment. When Zhang Qing died, Xing Jun sighed and didn't even look at him, while the rest of the law enforcement team arrested the other disciples of Tianzhemen brought by Zhang Qing at the moment when Zhang Qing fell. Looking at these disciples of Tianzhemen, Xing Jun knew that he had to be busy later, and he had to eradicate this Tianzihemen. In order to eradicate these evil cultivators, only their law enforcement team can take action. Zhao Waoqi and his law enforcement pavilions can only maintain law and order. There is no ability to deal with evil cultivators. The master of Tianjia sect, Tibetan Qing, died in the hands of David. The news spread instantly. This time, David was pushed to the cusp of the storm. Many aristocratic sects that were still paying attention to David died in an instant, and there was no news. Even the Tibetan Qing of Tianzihemen is not David's opponent. Ordinary sect families want to trouble David, wouldn't that be hitting the stone with an egg? I see this David, only Marquis Wu can cure him. In the entire Kyoto martial arts world, the leader of the younger generation is probably David. Not to mention Kyoto, even in the entire Daxia martial arts world, David's strength and age are among the best. Xiao Ao list, I think it will be re-ranked. This David is estimated to be able to rush to the first place. The entire forum is praising David, but this time is different from killing Guo Wei. This Tibetan Qing is an evil cultivator after all, and he is so high profile in the martial arts forum that many people dislike him. This time he was beheaded by David, and many people breathed a sigh of relief, and naturally praised David. The ranking of the free and easy list is not a false name. If this David can rush to the first place, where should I go? Are you looking down on me, Xin Pengfei? Just when everyone was talking about it, suddenly a top comment jumped out. This time, there are a lot fewer comments on the forum, scrolling in an instant. Obviously, this comment was sent by Xin Pengfei, who is the #1 auctioneer on the happy list. A year ago, Xin Pengfei had reached the strength of a half-step Wuhao, but this year, there was very little news about him. No one knows his true strength now. However, the happy list is not an official list after all, and there are not many people who follow it, most of which are young people. Now Xin Pengfei suddenly appeared, and after a brief period of consternation, many people began to boil. Boss Xin has appeared, you will always be our boss. No one on the free and easy list, Brother Fei, who has dominated the list for many years, finally appeared. Who said just now that David can rush to #1 on the free and easy list? Are you saying something? Xin Pengfei's fanatical fans on the martial arts forum are much more than David. Chapter 1175. After all, Xin Pengfei became famous early, and he was the most talented person of the younger generation. All kinds of auras are added to the body, and there are countless fans. And David has only recently gained some popularity. I look forward to it. Brother Fei can follow David to a match, so that we can know who is the best. This sentence instantly exploded the entire forum again. Yes, yes, let them compete, and then you will know who is more powerful. Brother Fei has been famous for many years. He was already a half-step marquis a year ago. How can he still use it to compare with that David? I think that David has a lot of skills. If Xin Pengfei can't compare, he is probably afraid of falling off the altar. This time, the two people who were originally unrelated were instantly turned into enemies by those people on the forum. Looking at the increasingly out-of-control remarks on the forum, Xin Pengfei's face behind the screen was extremely gloomy. For a whole year, he had been in seclusion for a year, and he had just been promoted from the half-step Wuhao to the realm of Wuhao. At this level, Xin Pengfei really wanted to find someone to play against, and by the way, let everyone know that he was still very strong after not seeing him for a year. And now, David is the best person to accompany him to practice. In the Gregorian calendar year, I will compete with David. Whether he dares to fight or not at that time will not be under my control. After Xin Pengfei finished speaking on the forum, he turned off the computer. Soon, news spread that Xin Pengfei challenged David by pendulum. However, at this time, David didn't know about it at all. He didn't expect that he would have an additional enemy for no reason. At this time, David was on his way to Kyoto. David thought that there would be a lot of resistance on his way to Kyoto. After all, many aristocratic sects were staring at him. But contrary to David's expectations, the road was surprisingly quiet. No one attacked David. Even Luo Xiang of the Luo family in Mobei seems to have no news. But David didn't know that Luo Xiang had already been in Kyoto for many days at this time. It's just that he has never heard from David. However, when he knew that David had killed all the masters of Tianxia sect, he was obviously a lot more cautious. On this day, Luo Xiang found the Ning family in Kyoto. To deal with David, Luo Xiang needs the help of the Ning family. Although Luo Xiang had some festivals with Ning Ji, he believed that the enemy was the friend. Ning Ji also hated David. As long as the two of them united, David would definitely die. But Luo Xiang had been at the Ning's house for an hour and had been drinking tea in the living room, but no one of the Ning's stewards came forward. Ning Ji didn't even show up. Eldest young master, this Ning family is obviously not giving you face, why are we still waiting here? One of the servants behind Luo Xiang said indifferently. Then Ning Ji deliberately hangs me, I know, but if it's a big deal, we'll just wait here. Luo Xiang picked up the teacup, blew lightly, and started drinking tea. I don't know how many glasses he drank. In the back of the living room, Ning Ji looked at Luo Xiang quietly through the crack of the door. The Ning family and the Luo family had no intersection, and when they were in Zishuan, Luo Xiang didn't give any face. Now that we are in the capital, Ning Ji has to give Luo Xiang a slap in the face. Originally, Ning Ji thought that Luo Xiang couldn't stand the humiliation and would take the initiative to leave, but he didn't want Luo Xiang to sit still after an hour had passed. Master, do you want me to drive them away? The housekeeper of the Ning family whispered to Ning Ji. Ning Ji waved his hand, no, since this Luo Xiang is so sincere, then I will meet him. Ning Ji finished speaking, tidied up his clothes, and then walked out. I don't know that young Master Luo is coming, but I'll be far away. Ning Ji walked to the living room and said with a smile. Chapter 1176. I don't know, I can't see it at all. Some time ago, the two almost clashed. Young Master Ning, take the liberty to interrupt. Luo Xiang got up and folded his fists. Ning Ji sat on the main seat and asked, I don't know if Luo Gongzi came to my Ning's house from Mobei, is there something wrong? Luo Xiang looked at Ning Ji, in fact Ning Ji knew better than anyone else, but since Ning Ji asked this, Luo Xiang didn't hide it and said, Mr. Ning, then David destroyed the Demon Town Tower and escaped from Zishuan. Come back, I followed all the way. It's just that he lost his whereabouts recently. Now that David has appeared and killed the Tibetan Qing of Tianzhemen, I believe you know it too. I know that young Master Ning also hates that David, so I want to join forces with young Master Ning to get rid of that David. Destroyed the Demon Suppression Tower. Ning Ji frowned deeply when he heard this, that Demon Suppression Pagoda is an ancient thing. No matter how good David is, it is impossible to destroy it. Ning Ji heard the Gu family's big housekeeper talk about the origin of this town magic tower. How could such a treasure be destroyed if it was destroyed? David should not have that ability. Young Master Ning doesn't believe me. Luo Xiang was stunned for a moment, and then explained, the Devil Town Tower has indeed collapsed, and now it's a pile of ruins. Ning Ji also knew that Luo Xiang couldn't lie to him, but Ning Ji wouldn't believe it if the Demon Town Tower was destroyed like this. After thinking for a while, Ning Ji suddenly said, I see, then David must have taken the treasure of the town tower in the town, so the town collapsed suddenly. Since the Demon Suppression Tower is so magical, there must be treasures in the tower, and David took the treasures, so the Demon Suppression Tower collapsed. Oh! Luo Xiang's eyes lit up, what treasure? Ning Ji shook his head, how do I know, but I'm sure that David must have gotten the treasure from the Demon Suppression Tower. Mr. Ning, now there are many treasures on David's body. As long as we join forces and kill David, those treasures will be ours. Luo Xiang said to Ning Ji. But who knew Ning Ji sighed, then many people in David want to kill him to win the treasure, but it's a pity that besides his own strength, even Mr. Shi from the law enforcement team is partial to him. Zhu Zishan of the Martial Arts Alliance has nothing to do with David. If we take action against David, Mr. Shi will definitely be unhappy. Master Ning, my Luo family is far away in Mobei, I'm not afraid of any law enforcement team, I can come forward to deal with David, but I brought too few masters this time, as long as Master Ning is willing to lend me some people to kill David after that, the treasures are divided equally. Luo Xiang still persuaded Ning Ji. Ning Ji fell into deep thought, and after thinking it over and over again, Ning Ji nodded, okay, I'll lend you 2 masters of the Peak of Wuzong, I hope you can also speak your mind. Of course, in this place in Kyoto, do I still dare to deceive you, unless I don't want to go back to Mobei? Luo Xiang said with a smile. That's right, in Kyoto, no one dares to lie to me. Ning Ji said proudly. Luo Xiang took the people away. In his opinion, with his own strength and the addition of 2 top martial artists, David will die. Kyoto Guardian Pavilion. I haven't seen David for almost a month. When Zhao Waoqi saw David again, he was very excited. Mr. Chen, it's really cool to hear that you beheaded the head of the sect that day, Zhang Qing. That guy is clamoring on the martial arts forum. Don't mention how arrogant. Now that you have killed him, I think many sect families in Kyoto are honest. Zhao Wuji said excitedly. David smiled lightly, Xieshu, everyone gets it and kills him. I can kill him, thanks to Captain Xing. Chapter 1177. David knew that if Xing Jun hadn't discovered the secret of the Tibetan Qing technique at that time, he probably wouldn't have been able to kill the Tibetan Qing. Mr. Chen, during the time you left, the capital has become much quieter, but the Dong Jiahao from the Dong family has come to look for you many times, and I don't know what's going on. Zhao Waoqi said to David. What does Dong Jiahao have to do with me? Hearing this, David frowned slightly. Then Dong Jiahao has been looking for him many times, nothing will happen, right? I don't know either, but he said that after you return to the capital, give him a call. Zhao Wuji said. After David heard it, he took out his mobile phone and called Dong Jiahao. After all, Dong Jiahao is a good person, and he has helped himself. If he is so anxious to find himself, maybe something really happened. When Dong Jiahao received a call from David, he was overjoyed and asked David to wait for him at the law enforcement pavilion, while Dong Jiahao drove directly to the law enforcement pavilion. At this moment, there is a sumptuous banquet in the Dong family. Dong Lakun sat upright on the main seat, quietly waiting for David's arrival. Master, then David beheaded the Tianjia sect master, Zhang Qing, which shows that this guy has good strength. If we forcibly detain him, what if he resists? The housekeeper asked Dong Lakun in a low voice. Don't worry, I've already thought about it. Dong Lakun raised the corner of his mouth, and then took out a pill, which was crystal clear and very beautiful. Master, what is this? The butler asked curiously. This is called Qi Control Dan. As long as you eat this thing, no matter how great you are, you can't use it. Then David will let us slaughter it. Dong Lakun said lightly. After hearing this, the housekeeper hurriedly said, Master, I heard that David is very familiar with Yaya Shengu, and there are rumors that David is the owner of Yaya Shengu. In this way, if we give him medicine, isn't that a big knife in front of Guangong? He will definitely find out. Dong Lakun glanced at the housekeeper. I tell you, this Qi control pill is colorless and odorless, it dissolves in water, and you can't see it at all. Even if David is really the Valley Master of Medicine God, he won't be able to find it. So it is. The butler nodded, but then asked again, then we have control of David, what about the young master? If he knew, he would definitely disagree. I will find an excuse to let Jiahao leave. As long as we control David, it won't take long for the dragon crystal on him to be mine. Dong Lakun's eyes were full of greed. What about after we get Long Jing? If David is released, when he regains his strength, he will definitely come to us for revenge. The butler asked. Are you fucking stupid? Who said we're going to let him go? We got Long Jing and killed him directly. Can't we let the tiger go back to the mountain? Dong Lakun was a little annoyed by the question, and scolded the housekeeper angrily. But we killed that David. If Mr. Shi knew, we would be in trouble. The housekeeper shrank his head and reminded Dong Lakun in a low voice. Dong Lakun's face was flushed with anger, and he turned towards the butler's head suddenly. How the H3LL did I find a butler like you? Even if we kill David, we can't say that we killed it. It happens to be that kid from the Ning family. If we have hatred with David, then we will be the hands of the Ning family. When the time comes, Mr. Shi will also blame the Ning family. It would be good to bring down the Ning family. At that time, we will have one less opponent in Kyoto. The butler didn't dare to speak, and closed his mouth. Dong Lakun took the teapot, put the Qi control Dan in it, and shook it a few times. Finally, I opened it and smelled it, and nodded with satisfaction. He is now waiting for David to arrive, and then let David drink the tea. Chapter 1178. Law Enforcement Pavilion. Dong Jiahao personally drove to pick up David. After seeing David, Dong Jiahao gave David a big hug. Brother Chen, you are so arrogant that you even killed the master of Tianjia sect, Zhang Qing. In the future, the entire Kyoto martial arts world will take you as the leader of the younger generation. Dong Jiahao's eyes were full of envy. Brother Dong has won the prize. David smiled lightly. I don't know if Brother Dong is in a hurry to find me. Oh, there's nothing urgent, it's just that my dad wants to see you. In addition, during this period of time, many sect families in Kyoto are eyeing you. My dad wants you to hide in our house. Dong Jiahao said. You thank the Dong family for me. As the saying goes, you can hide for a while, but you can't hide for a lifetime. Those who should come will still come. David didn't want to go to Dong's house to hide. He planned to go to Yaishan Valley to see Longwu and the others. By the way, he asked Longwu to take him to the Valley of the Wicked. Now that the new year is approaching, if David cannot rescue his mother and Sonia with his own strength, he will use the power of the Valley of the Wicked. It's just that he doesn't know what the strength of the Valley of the Wicked is. My dad has prepared food and drink at home. If you don't want to stay at our house, you can always have a meal over there, right? In this way, it can prove that you have a good relationship with our Dong family. If there are other sects and aristocratic families against your idea, you should also weigh the strength of my Dong family. Dong Jiahao invited David. David saw that Dong Jiahao had said this, so it was not easy to refuse. After all, it wouldn't take long to eat a meal. After getting in the car, David followed Dong Jiahao towards Dong's house. When he arrived at the place, Dong Lakun actually came out to greet him. Ha ha ha, I heard Jiahao mention you a long time ago. When I saw you today, it really lives up to its reputation. Mr. Chen is now famous. Dong Lakun very politely followed David and shook hands. Patriarch Dong has won the award. David said with a smile. Soon, a few people were seated, and the table was full of delicacies from the mountains and seas. Mr. Chen, when you are here, it's like you are at home, so don't be polite. I'm relieved to have a friend like you in our family. This guy has fun all day long, and he doesn't need to practice at all. The younger generation of the entire Kyoto martial arts world is stronger than him. As Dong Lakun said, he glanced at Dong Jiahao helplessly. Dad, why are you talking about me all day long? I think I work very hard. There are a few young people who are as talented as Brother Chen and become famous at a young age. Dong Jiahao looked at his father dissatisfied. Look, I'm not happy to tell you a word. Dong Lakun glared fiercely. Patriarch Dong, in fact, Brother Dong is very good, and Brother Dong is outspoken and has no intention of harming others. Such a character will definitely not be bad in the future. David hurriedly helped Dong Jiahao with good words. Just when David said the words harmful heart, no one noticed that there was a trace of embarrassment in Dong Lakun's eyes. It is precisely because he is outspoken that I am afraid that he will suffer in the future, and I hope Mr. Chen will help him a lot in the future. Dong Lakun said with a smile. Brother Dong and I are friends, so of course help. David nodded. Housekeeper, go and bring my treasured PUERT. Dong Lakun glanced at the housekeeper and winked at the housekeeper. Yes. The butler turned and left. Brother Chen, you have a good taste. My dad's PUERT is a special offering. I won't drink it. I'm going to touch you today. Dong Jiahao said to David. David smiled lightly. Patriarch Dong is so polite. David had no doubts about Dong Lakun's enthusiasm. After all, Dong Jiahao is a person, and David sees it in his eyes, so he thinks that Dong Lakun, who is a father, will not be too bad. Chapter 1179. Soon, the tea was brought, and Dong Lakun poured a cup for David himself. Mr. Chen, how about you try it? Dong Lakun made a gesture of invitation, and then tried to keep himself calm. He can't show his flaws at this time. Thank you, Patriarch Dong. David thanked him, then picked up the teacup and took a sip. Yes, but I don't know much about tea. David said with some embarrassment. Haha, in fact, I don't know much about it. If it's good, then drink more. Dong Lakun laughed. David held the teacup and drank it all in one go. At this moment, Dong Lakun breathed a long sigh of relief. Dong Jiahao also drank with David, but Dong Lakun did not stop him. He has an antidote on him, so Dong Jiahao will be fine if he drinks it. Soon, after 3 rounds of wine and 5 flavors of food, David felt that it was almost time and wanted to get up and leave. Mr. Chen, all the major sects and families in Kyoto are now staring at you. If you don't dislike it, then stay in our Dong family, just to be a companion with Jiahao. Seeing that David was leaving, Dong Lakun said to David. Thank you, Patriarch Dong, for your kindness. I still have a lot to deal with, so I won't bother you anymore. David politely declined. Mr. Chen, you stay here first, I still have something to ask you. Dong Lakun kept David, then looked at Dong Jiahao and said, Jiahao, your mother just called and asked you to pick her up, hurry up. When Dong Jiahao heard this, he could only pick up his mother, so he looked at David apologetically, Brother Chen, then I'm sorry. Brother Dong, you're welcome, hurry up. David smiled slightly. Dong Jiahao left, and David looked at Dong Lakun and asked, Master Dong, I don't know if you have anything else to ask. Mr. Chen, I heard that you have a lot of treasures on your body, and you also have a fused dragon crystal that can generate the power of a dragon. I don't know if it's true. Dong Lakun asked. David was stunned for a moment, but still nodded, yes, it's true. Seeing David admit it in person, Dong Lakun's eyes flashed brightly, and his face was full of excitement. Seeing Dong Lakun's expression, David was slightly shocked. Mr. Chen, then I'll open the skylight and say something bright. Your current strength, even if you're not as strong as Long Jing, can still rank among the best in the martial arts world of the younger generation. But my family's Ho is not good enough. He has poor strength and doesn't work hard. Not to mention being on the free and easy ranking. Even the younger generation in the Kyoto martial arts world is stronger than him. Dong Lakun sighed, looking like he hated iron. What does Patriarch Dong mean? David frowned slightly at this moment. It doesn't mean anything else. I think you and Jiahao are also friends. Can you give Longjing to Jiahao, and I can exchange other treasures with you? Dong Lakun said. When David heard this, his face immediately turned cold. I'm sorry, if it's something else, I will definitely help, but this Long Jing, I can't give it away. I still have something to do, I'm sorry. David got up and walked out. He found that this Dong Lakun didn't want what he imagined. But just as David walked to the door, he was stopped by the housekeeper. David turned to look at Dong Lakun. Patriarch Dong, what do you mean? At this time, Dong Lakun showed his true colors and said with a cold smile, no other meaning, since you don't want to give it, then I can only get it myself. David's eyes narrowed, his eyes filled with coldness. For the sake of brother Dong, I don't want to start killing people in the Dong family, don't force me. David's face was as gloomy as water. Ha ha ha. Dong Lakun laughed loudly, open up the killing ring? Do you think you can still exert your strength now? You have already hit my chi control pill, and now you are a waste. Chapter 1180. When David heard this, he was taken aback, and then his chi sank into his danshan. This temptation, David found that he had no influence at all. As for the chi control dan that Dong Lakun said, David had no idea what it was. Could it be that the chi control pill only has an effect on warriors and has no effect on immortal cultivators? David thought to himself. However, David did not show it, but frowned tightly, pretending that he had lost all his skills. How is it, have you figured it out? If you hand over Long Jing obediently, you will save me from doing it. Dong Lakun looked at David with a sneer. You are dreaming. David's face was gloomy, and he looked at Dong Lakun with murderous expression. If that's the case, don't blame me for being rude. After Dong Lakun finished speaking, he waved his hand. A servant of the Dong family who stopped in front of David instantly shot at David. Even the servant of the Dong family is a Wuzong. But when the servants of the Dong family were pressing towards David, they saw David shoot it with a palm. Puff! There was a sound of a rotten watermelon being stepped on. I only saw that the head of the servant of the Dong family burst instantly, and the whole person flew directly more than 10 meters away. Seeing that David still has such strength, Dong Lakun was shocked. His eyes were full of incomprehension. He spent a lot of money on the chi control pill, and it was absolutely 100% effective. Why didn't it work on David? Is it because the time is too short? Dong Lakun was a little confused. But now that his face has been torn apart, no matter what, it is impossible for him to let David leave. Take him to me. Dong Lakun ordered to the housekeeper. The butler nodded, and then light lingered on his fists. In a moment, the two tiger heads covered the butler's fist, and a tiger roared loudly. This is the stunt of the housekeeper. To be the big housekeeper of the Dong family is naturally an extraordinary ability. David, do you still want to resist? The housekeeper asked David. David's eyes were slightly condensed. Stop talking nonsense, if you have any skills, just use it, don't fucking want to be a tch, and build a torii. At this time, David was extremely disgusted with the Dong family. All are hypocrites. Seeing this, the butler stopped talking, but exploded with energy, and then stepped towards David. The huge boxing shadow with a sound of tiger roar, as if two fierce tigers rushed towards David. The sound of breaking the sky resounded in the sky. David didn't move at all, and a dazzling golden light flashed from his fists. The power of the dragon lingered on his fists, turning into two golden dragons circling. Facing the butler's attack, David also punched out. With the sound of a dragon roar, David's fist strength also turned into a golden dragon and greeted him. Boom! The two dragons and two tigers collided, and the huge energy exploded in an instant. The whole house began to tremble, and the tables and chairs in the room instantly turned into powder. Seeing this, Dong Lakun hurriedly put his palms together, and a breath visible to the naked eye supported the house, otherwise the house would collapse. Looking at the butler, he was directly knocked out and fell heavily to the ground, spitting blood. You were not charged with Qi Dan at all, you controlled your power. The butler looked at David in disbelief. On the other hand, David raised the corner of his mouth and did not answer, but jumped up and ran out of the courtyard. Although David was not controlled by the Chi Dan, but facing a master like Dong Lakun and the rest of the Dong family, David was no match. To know that the Dong family can stand in the capital, and not join the martial arts alliance, it must have a certain strength.